I used to book Zoom calls with my prospects on a daily basis. Do you know how many I would close? Zero. You heard me right. And I always thought it was just because they were not the right person, or whatever excuse my head told me at that moment. Until I actually zoomed out, looked at all the patterns. Then I realized my mistakes. And then I built a standard for all my calls. Do you know what happened next? I started closing clients and getting commitments set. And chances are you are also making these same mistakes currently. So we'll fix that. Then I'll give you my full strategy so you can be a client conversing machine too. Let's hop into the first mistake I was making, the urge to try and impress my prospects. On the Zoom calls, I tried to constantly over please them, smiling to things I never really found funny, and being overly loose, not pushing back on requests that were outside my service. And I thought I was selling, but in real sense, I was signaling to them that I couldn't be taken seriously as a person and as a business owner. Another big one for me, which didn't give me confidence in my calls, was having weak offers. I was selling ads as a service, and that was it. I didn't have offers that complemented the service. And when a prospect sees this, in their head, they can easily commoditize you. And once you are commoditized, you start competing with your competitors on price rather than value. Meaning you can't charge as high as you want or as high as the value you provide your clients demands. Meaning you can't charge premium for your services because they simply aren't. The next was definitely reaching out to every sub niche in my niche, which was real estate. I fixed my second mistakes and built out good offers around my service. But I was getting on Zoom calls with people that simply couldn't afford my service and the value I wanted to provide as a standard for all my clients. So when I named the investment into our service, it will always hit a dead end and lead me to going back to square one. The fourth mistake I made was not setting frame from day one. Early on in the calls, I did not set expectations on what the purpose of the call was and what an efficient end would look like for both of us, which in my case was understanding their business as the goal and me closing them to be clients of REM Media as the efficient end. But this mistake was probably the catalyst to me bleeding prospects. I did not get commitments locked in before hanging up on a call. Without this, the prospects would leave the call without either sending invoice payments to me or giving me the appropriate accesses I need to run our service for them efficiently. Immediately they leave the call, they turn cold, meaning I've lost that prospect. But after zooming out and actually looking at the bigger picture, I had a mental shift in the business side of things. Firstly, I stopped trying to impress and focused on learning and perfecting my skill, letting that do all the talking for me. Then I moved from trying to sell hard to every client to thinking about how I can provide as much value as possible. It's not about getting the clients, it's about retaining them. And if you offer what no one else in your market is offering, whether it be over the top add ons, upsells structured in the eyes of your prospects as a no brainer, or just the culture built around your business, these are what makes your prospects feel like they are partners, not just a cash printing machine. And it will shift the dynamics, meaning you attracting prospects rather than chasing after them. But you can't build out quality offers without being specific in your sub niche, which I moved from trying to get every client in the real estate space to focusing only high end brokers and developers because they checked all the boxes for me. They have the cash flow, they have the experience, less headaches, and they can afford my service. And due to me niching down on my niche, it allowed me to build out sick offers around my service tailored to their specific needs at their current business stage and providing so much more value than when I would have wanted to work with every single person under the sun in the real estate space. But the simplest thing I improved on that gave me the biggest return on investment in all my Zoom call was locking in commitments before ending that meeting. In fact, my number one rule of sale is never leave the call without having commitments set. Because once you don't and they get off that call, they become cold very fast. Okay, cool. Now that I've given you the mistakes I've made and the mindset shifts that help me improve on the business side of things, Here is a strategy that helped me significantly improve my conversions. This strategy is broken into pre, on, and post call segments. For the pre call, I suggest cold calls is the fastest way to build trust with prospects and book calls. Then you want to make sure that you're on the call with the owner. Then you want to start along the lines of your name, niche, that's who you help, them, make it specific to them, results, most times leads, so lead gen, and channel, paid ads on Meta or Google, right? Then you can use all these frameworks. You can really fiddle with it. You can fiddle with it all around and we'll find what works for you. Basically, the game is getting a framework, knowing what works for you, and iterate. Basically, there's no specific way of doing cold calls, but this is the method I currently use for REM Media, YNRC. Once you're done with the opener pitch, you then leave them with an opener question, asking them if that's something they'll be willing to get on a call for. Should I show them how you can do it exactly for their business? It works because it's short, straight to the point, makes them know you're a specialist, and you're not really selling them anything. It's more about them getting educated about paid ads. And one thing about business owners is they are always open to learn as long as it helps their business. So once you book the call with them, you want to message them on WhatsApp and send them the meeting link. If you've had any prior clients, you'd want to keep them engaged and excited for the meeting. And how you do this is keep sending them case studies. And I'm not saying you should spam their DMs. Just maybe on a day-to-day basis or every 2 days, depending on the duration or how long it is before the Zoom meeting. If it's let me say tomorrow, you can just send them a case study um 6 hours before the Zoom meeting. And why this is important is because it builds credibility and trust before you ever step into that meeting. But if you have not worked with any prior client, that's perfectly fine. You just need to keep them engaged in the DMs, send them reminders so they have it on the top of their mind to actually show up to the meeting. Then 12, 6, 3, and an hour to the meeting, you'd want to send them reminders. This applies to if you have case studies or not. Reminders are non-negotiables. Now, that has the pre-call sequence. Then we get to the on-call strategy. At the beginning of the meeting, you'd want to start with opener questions like why they decided to actually get on the call with you. Then something like how do they imagine their ideal business based on prospects inputs or revenue inputs or whatever, depending on your niche. Your niche determines a lot of these questions, right? So I'm just speaking from what I usually do. Then you'd want to have a transition question that moves you from the top to a more serious topic, right? And one of my favorites is what is their current way of acquiring clients currently? Is it through referrals, word of mouth, affiliates, paid platforms? You'd want to get into that because their answers usually determine how you position your pitch and sell them on your service. If it's referrals, word of mouth, affiliates, you know that those are not guaranteed steady flow of leads. You can use that to hammer. Then for the platforms, you want to ask what results these methods are actually generating them as a business. With these answers, you can find cracks you can use as ins for your service. Then if the results are poor, dig deeper and ask what will be the outcome if these problems persist. Dig deep into the pain, make them realize how important it is to their business. Then once you dig into the pain and they are fully conscious of what they are getting in and what it's costing them as a business, ask what impacts would X amount of leads do in the business. If you have a case study, this is the perfect time to deploy it. Makes them resonate with that particular person, especially if they are in the same niche. And then they start thinking, what if this was me? But if you don't have any case studies, you can skip this and run them through what paid advertising is, a medium through which they can get to their preferred prospects through ads, then what it means for their business. They no longer have to compete with their competitors in saturated platforms. They only need a Facebook page and need to add you as a partner. And you, the specialist in their niche, handles the rest. After getting them through all this, you'd want to provide for them value. A quick one I do is right before the call, I create for them a custom ad strategy to their business with their logo, their company name, and everything, right? And I send it over to them for them to look at it. And then during the call, I use that custom ad strategy as the outline or framework for the meeting, right? And by the end of everything, they understand what opportunity they have lying in front of them. So the fee value should also act as an advocate for you to have an in into the business, right? But the only way this actually works is if you provide value. Would they rather take all that information and go look on Google, ChatGPT, Claude, Perplexity, Grok, and do all this research to learn how to run ads, or would they rather pay you, the specialist, to do it for them? I think the answer is pretty obvious. These are business people. They do not have time to be doing research. No, they barely have time to get on the Zoom calls, talk less, learn how to implement a new strategy into their business. Now that you have educated them about the opportunity they have, you have given them the upside, you have given them the outline on how to do it themselves, right? And then you have shown them the offers you have. If you are the one implementing all that as the specialist with extra offers you have, which they're obviously going to go to you. The next elephant in the room is talking about the investment into your service. This is where most people screw this up, me included when I started out. Most times, even with clients, they can be skeptical, especially when you're a newcomer in the space. And they may say something like they need proof, and you immediately give up and end there. But the ideal step is to downsell them and up them into a free trial. It can be a 7 day, 7 to 14 day free trial where you actually run the shift for them and they see the results. Once they see the results, before the trial even ends, you can get them on a call and close them because now they are seeing the results come in. And then they start to think about, what if this trial ends, all these results stop, and I go back to my old ways? And that is not something they would want to do. So it makes it easier for you to close them, even though they had doubts in the beginning, because you are willing to give them a free trial. Plus, you are getting case studies you can use as leverage to get higher enterprise clients. Either ways, you win. But the setup fee is a non-negotiable, whether they close or not. Before you ever put a single minute to work, they need to pay a setup fee. Once invoices are paid, you want to run them through how to enter into the Meta Business Suite. This is where they add you as a partner. Then, as the specialist, you can create their ad accounts, help them add their payment methods, structure their campaigns, and get ad creatives, set the budgets, and publish the ad. Now, after the call, you'd want to still send in the free value resource which they could use if you have not sent it already prior to the call. Then pair that with a thoughtful note about the just finished call. Always remember, it's not about signing clients, it's about retaining them. Keeping them up to date on a daily basis alone can save you churn. And with that, that's the full breakdown on my most conversing meeting playbook. Hope you got a ton of value from it. If you're not subscribed, do so. My next video is about how I built the mindset of a real business owner, thinking ROIs and SOPs. Don't miss them, and I'll see you on the other side. Alright.